Alright guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Well, thank you very much for coming in the middle of the week on a Tuesday night to come out and hear this. This is our 8th iteration of the Great Debate. This semester we were joined in presenting it by the UC Dems, so we do thank them for that very much. The reason why we originally started doing this and why we've tried to grow this every semester is because we feel that it's really important at this time in your lives when you guys are out figuring out what you want to do in life and figuring out how you want to fit into the world. It's important that we discuss a lot of the difficult topics that don't get discussed in high school, and that's exactly what a college campus is for. So we think that it's great that you guys came out, and next semester, be sure to tell your friends. We'll continue to have the free Papa John's. There is a survey that we will ask you to take at the end of it. It'll be emailed to you with the email that you signed in with. We do ask you to take it just because it provides us feedback, not just for the debate, but then also the debaters so that they know how they're doing. So it is helpful for us. And then we also will have a question and answer session where there's a link that you can submit your questions for the debate so that we'll be able to answer those as well. Yes. And then without further ado, I'll introduce our moderator. He is our secretary at Young Americans for Liberty, Justin Cott. And you will take it from here.
All righty. Are we? Maybe turn it on a little bit. Okay. All right. Before we get started, I also want to thank. Okay. All right. I did want to congratulate and thank Garrett, RMC, for his many years of service at the club. He will be graduating this year. I will be doing this, but thank you. Okay. So we have opening statements up first, and now we'll begin. 45 minutes.
Welcome everybody and thanks for coming. We are Young Americans for Liberty. We're a campus group that works to foster and promote individuals' liberty and personal freedom. We believe the government is best when it is smallest. We believe that you know how to run your life better than some bureaucrats and elected people with a low popularity rating in Washington. We believe that free markets are what provide the highest level of wealth and opportunity to all people, from the poorest to the rich, and that free markets are what brings people out of poverty all throughout the world and has done so over the course of human history. And we look forward to discussing these topics with the other groups today.
Hey guys, I'm Ben, this is Caleb. We're from Young Democratic Socialists of America. We're a fairly new organization on campus. And we believe that the government does have a right to provide things for people that they can't guarantee from the market themselves. For example, free health care, a right to a comprehensive education, things that will guarantee you an equal starting line as you participate later on in the free market. We don't believe that corporations and the private market left alone can sufficiently regulate itself and will not act in the interest of the people. So we're really looking forward to debating with, well, we're kind of looking forward to debating with us. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, anything to add? Awesome.
All right, thanks for coming, Jennifer.
Hi, my name is Hannah. This is Peter. We are here to represent a progressive platform. We look at our country and see that as large businesses and political elites have gotten richer and more influential, the majority of Americans have been left behind. We envision a country where people have equal opportunity, where your ability to live a happy and fulfilling life is not determined at your birth, is not determined by your gender, race, sexual orientation, or economic status. We want a government that actually works for people, that elected, one that fights for access to health care, worker protections, and the right of all to succeed. We do not hold these policies and ideas because they are the hottest trend or because a set ideology tells us to, but because they are what is necessary and proven to help as many Americans rise up and succeed as possible.
All right, and last, the college for healthcare.
Hello, good evening everyone. My name is Dylan. To the right of me, or your left, is Jack Barton, who's the president of the UC College Republicans. First off, I would like to thank Young Americans for Liberty for once again putting on the great debate. We're all very fortunate to be on a college campus where we can get together somewhat civilly and debate these hotbed topics, unlike in places like Berkeley. As Republicans and conservatives, we believe in one core principle of limited federal government and fiscal conservatism. We believe that through free market and the private industry, individuals have a lot more freedom to do with their money and to do as they please, and it is an overall greater benefit to themselves and the people around them.
Alrighty, and now we will get started with our first topic, big business. And the question is, have the largest businesses and tech companies in America grown too large? If so, under what criteria do you believe that they should be broken up and regulated? Our first opening statement on this question will come from Whitey
We believe that large corporations have too much interest and influence over the individuals around us and people. The classic example, the current one being Facebook, the fact they're constantly harvesting and selling your data over time. Additionally, increased government oversight is better for business as it shows that you increase transparency for all individuals, and the fact that we are overturning Citizens United, dissolving Citizens United status of corporations, will be better for the people and as well for America. Additionally, large corporations have constantly utilized the fact there is no government oversight to, attack individuals and people, not so much attack, but rather manipulate the market to their own benefits. And the fact that they can grow in exponential proportions, while tech companies are constantly growing, trying to influence every aspect of your life, shows that these are becoming an increasing issue that's not being addressed appropriately. I yield my time.
Okay, and next will be Al.
We would take a different approach, but there is a monopoly that we are worried about as libertarians, and that's the monopoly of the government. They're the world's largest monopoly. They also grant all the monopolies that do exist in the United States. They force you to buy their products at gunpoint. We think Americans deserve more of a choice, and that's why we think power should be brought back to the states and to local communities. When we talk about big business, I think one thing to get straight is that big businesses actually want regulation because they have the staff to handle the regulation. The small businesses don't. They're going to go under. That's why you see Zuckerberg welcoming regulation with open arms, because he knows that he can lobby to get the regulation to say what he wants it to, so that Facebook will end up on top and new companies that try to start up won't have a chance. The reality is these corporations are big because they add so much value to our economy. It's hard to grow businesses fail at an incredibly high rate. So the ones that become so big only do so because they give our economy so much value. That's value to consumers. When we buy those products and services, we are helping the economy to run more efficiently, because efficiency is just, you get more for less. That means we have more resources to use elsewhere in the economy. It helps everything run smoother. Now, there's lots of examples in the past where people were scared of so-called monopolies, such as IBM or Sears, right? Sears doesn't even exist anymore, so that's that.
Okay. All right, next is the Democrats.
Cool. So the question was, have businesses grown too large? And yes, if we are in a system where if one bank fails, the entire economy crashes, that is too large of a business. If we are at a system where you can have a company like Google manipulate its search results to essentially go and crush its competitors, that is too big of a business. When companies are growing larger, profits are growing larger, but wages are being stagnant, you know the system is wrong. My friend Charlie over there mentioned that big business is good for the economy. It may be good for the economy as a whole, but those aren't being passed down to consumers. Those aren't being passed down to average Americans like us. In order to address that, how do we address it? There's no real objective checklist, I think, to go and say what company is too big. So you have to go and look at each on a case-by-case basis. You have to look at how it's impacting prices, how it's impacting competition, and most importantly, how it's affecting workers' ability to go and find fair, honest, well-paying work. And to do that, we need a Department of Justice that takes antitrust seriously and actually has some teeth. You've seen the Trump administration allow big mergers like Disney's acquisition of Fox go through with no real scrutiny. The Obama administration let a ton of mergers go by as well, and it's something that when we have our next Democratic president in 2 years, I hope we have some stronger Department of Justice.
So I think our friends on the libertarian side here said it great. The largest monopoly that we as Americans should be concerned with is the monopoly that is the United States government. As we've seen in recent history with healthcare, especially with college, I think college is probably one of the greatest examples. As we've seen since we've started allowing a lot more federal student loans to go out, we've seen the cost of cost of college rise further and further. But as it pertains to big businesses and businesses, I don't think it's the United States government's place to determine what is too big and to split up certain businesses. Obviously, if these businesses are becoming large and growing, that means the American people are utilizing these businesses. They're buying their products. They agree with them as a company, as a system. Obviously, if someone doesn't like it, they're not going to use it. So I think it's a pretty simple way to look at it. That's what I have to say. I mean, Charlie summed up quite well with our stance too. So.
Okay. I would like to, yeah.
So Peter mentioned wages, and I think it's nice to point out that Walmart continually raises their wages voluntarily above the minimum wage because they care about their workers and it helps them to run a successful business. Walmart also is a very large corporation that's been great for lower class communities. And now we even see Dollar General moving in, competing against them to drive prices down even more. Why do you need to ask the government if you can merge your business with somebody else? I mean, what kind of country is this? That's just cronyism, right? You go to the government, you lobby, you give the politicians money and say, oh, please let us do what we want. Oh, please, king. But we don't have a king in this country and we shouldn't. You mentioned bank consolidation. The reason we have so few banks in this country compared to the past is because of the immense regulatory burden that caused small banks to consolidate. And if we look at big corporations like Amazon, I don't want that broken up. Amazon's great, and guess what? All of you can own stocks in Amazon, and when Amazon does well, you'll do well too.
My friends on the right have brought up a lot of stuff about how monopolies happen because of people having choice, that people want to have these businesses, they support them, and that's how they got so big. But that just isn't the case. You look at a lot of the tech companies right now, there is literally no way to avoid using some of the biggest tech companies. They've had studies where people have used filters on their phone to block Amazon, block Facebook, block Google's websites, and the internet became completely unusable. In this day and age, if you want to network, if you want to have a chance at getting a job, you can't afford not to use those tech companies, but you don't have a choice for good competitors. They've brought up this rather ridiculous notion that the government is somehow a monopoly. I'm sorry, but you can't just say one thing is bad, say one thing that you alone don't like, and then yada, yada, yada the rest.
It's a long line. So a few things. As far as the government providing those monopolies, it is true that our government does play a large role in handing subsidies to industries that do not have the best interest of the people at hand. But that is not the government acting with the interest of the people, that is the government acting with the interest of corporations. And that is why, when you have these large corporations that grow beyond the scope of what should normally be allowed in the free market, they begin to work their way into government. And that is completely disallowable. It's a travesty of democracy. So while I would agree that the government does aid a lot of monopolies that are in the market right now, a lot of those are because of those same industries lobbying the government to do so. As far as regulations hurting small businesses, yes, regulations can make it hard for small businesses to grow, but that's only shitty regulations. When you look at regulations for big tech, when you place things like a $25 billion worth on an industry and then you apply those regulations, those same things do not hurt those small businesses.
So I think he did have a good point that a lot of these big corporations are do a lot of lobbying in the government, which is why they actually welcome regulation, because they can deal with the regulation and their competitors can't. For example, Jeff Bezos loves the $15 minimum wage. Why? Because Amazon can pay the $15 minimum wage, and all his competitors probably can't. So, and when it comes to government monopolies, I know Medicare and Medicaid, you can only go to certain doctors, certain hospitals, they'll only pay for certain things, and that even gives those healthcare providers a monopoly when the government does things like that.
So I want to make something pretty clear, guys. We're talking about monopolies on this term around. There are not any natural monopolies. I would ask you to give me one example. Yes, there are very niche things that some people do and other people don't, but there's always alternatives in the marketplace. But the government does have a monopoly on force. They're the only ones who are allowed to lock you up, try you before a judge, throw you in jail. And they do use their monopoly power to give subsidies to corporations that they don't like in their interest. And the problem is government power. The problem is the government has the power to pick winners and losers. There was a company called Solyndra when we get to climate change. The government gave them $500 million and they never paid it back. They just defaulted. That's your money. And I would say all government regulations are sucky. So.
He mentioned, my friend Charlie over there, he mentioned government having this monopoly on force, monopoly on ability to lock you up. I'm sure he would go and welcome a scenario that goes against double jeopardy in the Constitution, where you can just have different companies, different competitors trying you and deciding to lock you up. It's a ridiculous concept. In terms of what they've been saying about regulations, the argument that because big businesses have used regulations to their own advantage somehow means that no regulations are good, it's faulty. Just because they haven't done it right in the past because of big business doesn't mean that we can't work now and actually lobby as citizens to go and have a government that works for our interests and not for the big business. It's not an argument against regulations, we're arguing against bad regulations.
A couple things. Again, monopolies and exceedingly large corporations are awful for competition, point blank. For example, internet service providers. It is impossible to enter that market unless you already have that foothold. Second note, when you talk about Amazon and Walmart raising minimum wage and liking to comply with this idea that you can pay your workers more, that's only the Americans that they're raising those wages for. Capitalism is still taking advantage of millions of people overseas. All right, I would like to see those child slave laborers in Malaysia hear about that $15 minimum wage that Jeff Bezos is pushing. Okay, that's not, the private market profits off of somebody somewhere. All right, and the government has a responsibility to stop that. It doesn't matter whether it's here or whether it's overseas. Someone is going to be taking advantage of if we are not regulating the system.
So I don't understand when you say capitalism taking advantage. I don't really know who this capitalism is. But what I do know is that corporations that have factories all over the world are one of the reasons that poverty is declining at absolutely rapid rates and has been for countless decades. This idea that, all these regulations have been bad and hurt small businesses. But we'll just get the right people in there and we'll make it right. We'll just give us some more time and we'll make it right. I mean, at what point do we come to terms with that? It simply doesn't work. And we can't just go and lobby the government all day. We have school, we have jobs, right? But if you look at a case, I want to bring up the case of Microsoft. So they did not used to lobby the government at all back in the day. But then their competitors said, hey, we'll hit them with antitrust lawsuits. Guess who lobbies a lot now? Microsoft. Because they had to get in bed with the government to prevent antitrust from being brought against them. And if we're going to talk about utilities and the internet, that's simply because the government grants licenses to certain businesses and makes it impossible for other companies to actually come and compete like would be the case in a free market.
Yeah.
So to kind of back up what Charlie was talking about, how capitalism has, poverty on a worldwide scale has been declining over the past 50 years because of the implementation of more free markets. I think one of the greatest examples of that is between North and South Korea. When we look at North and South Korea back when we were fighting over there, North and South Korea used to be equally poor, one of the poorest countries in the world. North Korea decided that they wanted a communist-style form of economy, which is basically a state-owned monopoly on every single business. The government controls what you make, the government controls, and there's only one manufacturer in each major market. South Korea, on the other hand, decided they wanted to implement more economic freedom. They wanted to implement more free markets, free trade, let people decide what they want to do, and let them go to work. Look at South and North Korea nowadays. North Korea, one of the poorest nations out there, people are starving, and literally right across the border you have South Korea, which is one of the largest economies in the world now, and it's increasing more and more every single year. One of the wealthiest nations. I mean, I think it speaks for itself.
So, for any of you who are confused, we do not represent North Korea, and nothing from that economic doctrine has anything to do with what we believe. Going back to Charlie's point about Microsoft earlier, actually, interestingly enough, when you talk about what you believe regulation hurts competition, that very same Microsoft lawsuit and not allowing them to become a provider and a search engine at the same time was exactly what allowed the company of Google to become a company in the first place. That very same government lawsuit was what allowed the market to open up and allowed that competition to take place. So I would just like to correct you on that.
So one of the things I want to talk about too is, yes, I think, we want to increase competition as much as we can, but it also comes from the fact that these are also the products and the companies that people are choosing. How many people here use Chrome? And I actually want you to raise your hand. How many people use Chrome? How many people use Firefox? How many people use Internet Explorer? How many people would want that? The majority use Chrome. Why use Chrome? It's probably the better system. It's more user-friendly. You get a free Gmail address and everything. It's a much better search engine. It's not just the fact that the government is wanting to control what you're using and all this. It's the people are also choosing what they want to use. And by implementing these restrictions on them, you're taking away that ability of them to choose the products that they want to use.
So it's funny that he brings up Chrome, because one of the interesting things with Chrome is that Google has their engine that drives Chrome. They've essentially went and made it so big and so that other websites work best with Chrome, that all of its competition, not including Firefox, Internet Explorer, all of the rest, are using Chrome's base engine now. You don't have any option of whether or not to use Chrome aside from Firefox, which is minusculely small. You don't really have true choice in that market. And that's what Google has been able to do consistently. In terms of their search engines, they've been able to go and with companies that have competing services to Google, they've prioritized Google's own services above those other companies, eliminating your choice, eliminating your ability to make an informed choice, giving them more power.
So we're bringing up competition a lot, and I think it's important to note that competition exists when there's freedom. So throughout the United States history with our economy, even in the time when we started coming up with antitrust, there was always competition. By the time antitrust lawsuits actually made their way against Standard Oil, they only had 13% market share. There's a fun example of a couple guys who started and sold multiple oil businesses to Standard Oil. They were just making money off of it. And I mean, the funny thing is, if your prices are higher than everybody's, you're considered predatory pricing. If they're lower, it's called gouging. If they're the same, it's called colluding. And all these things can be brought under antitrust legislation. It's just a farce You know, when FDR implemented a lot of the antitrust laws, he was simply fighting big businesses on behalf of other big businesses. And by the way, when the government first started granting natural monopolies, every industry under the sun wanted to be a natural monopoly. Milk, eggs, they all said, hey, we're monopolies. So this idea the government needs to step in is just not in accordance with how the market will function and has functioned.
So let's talk about competition. Now, the Republicans and the Libertarians believe that if there are two competing industries, or there are two competing companies within the same industry, that the people will choose the one that represents their interests better. Now, again, the point I made before is that you can no longer interrupt these industries. And when you look at backpacking off of what Peter was saying, when you have companies like Google and Facebook that control the very resources that companies need to begin whatever upstart small business they're going to have, Google and Facebook can control those resources and stop any new intervention in that industry before it even starts. So when you give a specific corporation the power to not only have their place in that market, but also control who else can enter that market, that means that competition does not exist, competition will not exist, and competition cannot exist unless there is government intervention.
So we're throwing around how scary Microsoft and Google Chrome is. I mean, is anybody in here really that scared of Google Chrome? I mean, Peter basically pointed out that Google Chrome is good, so we use it because it's good. I mean, I don't tend to use things that I think are bad products. I tend to use things that I think are good products. In the past, we've had big, scary organizations. We've had IBM. Everybody thought IBM was a big computer monopoly. By the time they got the antitrust legislation to them, they were basically nobody anymore. What does IBM do? Sears, right? Sears was the biggest retailer in the United States for about 12 years, right? You could call that a monopoly if you wanted to. Should we have broken them up? No, I mean, they're bankrupt now. They have 400 stores left. So the market will work itself out. It's just fear-mongering to say, oh, you know, Facebook's so scary, you know, nobody's going to take it over. What about MySpace, right? MySpace was the thing. That got taken over. Vine, everybody still loves Vine. Vine went out of business. So there is competition because there's always alternatives regardless of how you want to set up the industry.
Alrighty, we will transition to our next topic. The question is, how should government assess the presence and impact of climate change? And with that information, what is the appropriate response? The College Republicans will begin on this topic. And before they start, I'd like to add the Q&A submission form has been emailed to the folks at this time. So get cracking. Okay.
All right, so climate change. All right, so in 1970, when Earth Day became a thing, our guy, George Wald, he was a Harvard biologist, said that civilization will end in 15 to 30 years if we don't take immediate action against the problems facing mankind. Our guy, Stanford professor and American biologist, Paul Ehrlich, said the death rate will increase until at least 100 to 200 million people die and starve every single year. Our guy, Kenneth Watt, said, this is my favorite, if the present trend continues, the world will be about 4 degrees colder for the global mean temperature in 1990, but 11 degrees colder in the year 2000. That's about twice what it would take to put us in an ice age. So obviously all these have something in common. They didn't happen. In fact, polar sea ice has increased since the late 70s. Of course, everyone's going to call me a climate denier for being skeptical of outrageous doomsday predictions, just like AOC's prediction that the world's going to end in 12 years. While I am skeptical of these doomsday predictions, I do recognize the good that clean energy does for the environment and the harm that fossil fuels can do. This is why I'm in favor of getting rid of all energy subsidies, whether it be subsidies for clean energy like wind and solar, or not clean energy like oil and gas. I believe that all energy sources should have a fair shot in the market, and as our technology advances, I think clean energy, solar, wind, nuclear, stuff like that, I think it'll prevail. And I think we can advocate for clean energy without trying to make the government
So, Caleb and I are not here to talk about whether climate change exists, whether humans cause it, and whether it's bad. Because we know those things are happening, all right? I'm not here to argue with people who don't believe this shit's going on, because it is. The science is in, the science has been in for 50 years, and if you nitpick doomsday predictions, then it's your fault if those doomsday predictions don't happen. AOC is not predicting the world will end in 12 years. It means that the effects of climate change will be irreversible in 12 years. Now, climate change is an intersectional issue, and that's a very nice buzzword for you all, but what that means is that it's more than polar bears dying. That means its economy's collapsing, its borders being overrun, it's a whole goddamn shit show. Let me give you the example of the Biloxi, Chitimacha, Choctaw of Isle de Jean Charles in Louisiana. They are an American Indian tribe who lives in an island on the Gulf of Mexico. And their land has decreased by 98% since 1950 due to an increase in tropical storms and rising sea levels. So they are essentially the US's first climate change refugees. And let's see how that's going. We've thrown hundreds of millions of dollars at these people to try and move 60 of them from where they live right now somewhere else where they're safe. And it's going horribly. By 2050, we predicted that 200 million people will be displaced. I would love to see anyone try and combat that massive problem when this is how it's going with 60 people. Climate change is a problem. It's a problem now. It's only going to get worse. And the longer that we wait to fix it, the bigger of a problem that it's going to become. Thank you.
What did we hear? We heard more doomsday predictions. We're going to have millions of people dying, borders overrun. I mean, when does it end? When are we going to realize that these predictions simply aren't going to come true? Yes, there's climate change. Yes, there's probably something we have to do about it. But we haven't even figured out how bad it's going to be, right? Scientists agree that there's climate change, that humans are contributing to it, okay? Scientists don't believe that the government needs to step in and control our lives with this, oh my gosh, millions of people are going to die. This idea of climate refugees, right? People who have to go away for the weekend because there's going to be a hurricane, those people are counted as climate change refugees. Guess what? They're not, okay? But there will be some, probably some issues and some benefits from climate change. So how do we deal with those? We deal with them like anything else, right? The market provides solutions because people like us want to solve these problems. And if we want to have green energy be the future, guess what? All of you can buy stocks in green energy companies. You can directly help these companies become bigger. But that's something the market should do because like I mentioned about Solyndra earlier, the government throws money at green energy and it does nothing for us. We also have to figure out what are the costs of this. I mean, the cost of all these carbon tax and everything will be enormous. And like I mentioned, the solutions. Fossil fuels are a great reason that climate-related deaths have decreased 99.7% in the last 100 years. That's because of technologies like fossil fuels, and we'll continue to make those improvements.
So yeah, obviously this is a very complicated issue. The question was how should we assess the impact of climate change? I'd say probably should look at what some of the scientists are saying. Let's look at some nationally renowned, internationally renowned scientific bodies that have said climate change is real, humans are causing it, and that it's going to have devastating effects on it all. Let's see, the National Academy of Sciences, the American Meteorological Association, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and I'm sorry, this actually might take a little bit over time, because literally every international scientific body in the world agrees that humans are causing climate change and that we have the ability to stop its most devastating effects. Guys, the time to debate climate change is not now. It was 20, 50 years ago. Now is the time to act. My friends on the Republicans, they brought up all these doomsday prophesiers on the back. Those were individuals, not consensus. The consensus now is that climate change is happening and we can act to stop it through things such as carbon taxes, through things such as investing in clean energy. The individuals that they like to talk about, those crazy individuals, the crazy individuals now are the people denying it. 4 out of 70,000 scientists don't believe in climate change. 4 out of 70,000 isn't some noble minority. 4 out of 70,000 is called your local town crazies.
So I would like to say right here at the beginning, before we move on with this, neither one of us said that we denied climate change existing whatsoever. Obviously, when you've been burning beautiful, clean coal for 150 years, there's going to be pollution, there's going to be some environmental issues. But what we feel the solution is not throwing $93 trillion into completely destroying our infrastructure and our economy in 10 years to try and fix the solution. Yes, there are crazies out there that push these ideas of the doomsday predictions, but they push these doomsday predictions to pass an agenda, and it's working, as we see with AOC tossing out her ridiculous Green New Deal and how it's getting a lot of traction, which I think everyone in this room should be very frightened of, because it is a communist-level takeover of private property, and it's going to single-handedly destroy our economy. They talk about how in 20 years or so, that we're going to have borders being crushed and our economy is going to be destroyed. Our economy will be destroyed because we decided to try and spend $93 trillion in 10 years, not because the polar ice caps are melting.
So that's a very interesting point that you paint taking climate action as economically unfavorable, because the fourth National Climate Assessment, again, the fourth one that has come to the very same conclusion as the first three, and again, these are the top scientists in America, have come to the conclusion that by 2090, we will have lost $155 billion in wages due to climate change. That means that you're not going to be able to work when it gets hotter out. That means that your industries are going to collapse when your cities flood, and that means that we're going to go to shit as an economy. And that's when we don't do anything about climate change. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be cheap to stop climate change. It's going to be expensive. But those expenses, when we start them now, are going to avoid 48%. Again, this is from the NCA4. That is $75 billion of those $155 billion in lost wages. And that's not all of it. Those are just lost wages. That's not talking about displaced peoples. That's not talking about the amount of money that we're going to have to spend cleaning up after the mess is already here. Investing in climate change right now is the best thing to do.
So we're not here to deny climate change. That is something I want to take off the table. That is not the discussion here. You talked about consensus. There have always been consensus. There used to be a consensus that the earth was flat. That is no longer true. We have all come to that conclusion. Watch that documentary. That documentary was good. So what they agreed on was that climate change is real and that it was happening. I don't want to talk about the predictions because the predictions have not been coming true. So if we have a consistent failure of predictions, what can we depend on? That they said that it was true. So we can depend that they said it is true. So what we're disagreeing on is what to do. We are saying that allowing a free market system to work, to find a way to fix that system, to provide people an option of doing things in a better way. And also, scientists don't equal economists. Just because scientists say some stuff about money or what something will cost does not mean that they know what they're talking about, because they don't work in economy.
Yeah, so I agree that we should invest in climate change, but we should not be investing in climate change from a federal government standpoint. I think we should allow private industries to invest in newer innovations to work towards climate change. Have private industries work with cleaner energy. Have private industries work with new ways to cut emissions in factories, to have their own environmental standards. People have standards when it comes to work with companies. A lot of people are more likely to work with different companies when they are more, environmentally friendly, or they have different environmental standards. And this all comes around to companies having an interest in private citizens, because private citizens is what allows these industries to operate, what provides the revenue for them to run.
Along with that, we give tons of subsidies to oil and natural gas companies, but that so I would like to level the playing field by not giving subsidies to any energy company, but that includes green energy. That means we don't subsidize solar panels, we don't subsidize windmills, we don't subsidize any of that.
So The people who run these fossil fuel industries are not going to act in the interest of of citizens. By the time the shit hits the fan, everyone who's making money off of climate change right now will be dead. That's just a fact. And the free market does not have the interest of the people in mind because they're working to make themselves money. They're not worrying about what happens to our grandchildren and to our children. So that takes that off the table. Second of all, as far as predictions not coming true, again, those doomsday predictions, those individual I almost said non-consensual, but it's not a consensus. Those have not come true. But the models that we have right now, that we've invested all of our technology, all of our scientific manpower in, those are coming true. The predictions that the global temperatures that are going to be rising, those are rising. It's happening right now. Climate instability is real. We are already seeing an increase in extreme weather. We're already seeing sea level rise. Again, it's happening. It's already affecting people. Droughts the world over are already starting international conflict. They're already creating refugees within our own borders.
Okay.
Yeah, just going off of that, it doesn't make sense for us to wait and see these predictions come true because we'll be dead. There are effects of climate change that have happened now, besides just rising temperatures. There are floods happening in the Midwest, wildfires in California, and I can't believe that you would refer to people who escape violent hurricanes as people who go away for a weekend. Like, people lost their homes, people are losing their lives, people die because of the intensity of hurricanes that has been happening. These things, we're seeing these things. They're not just a simple, like we said before, it's not just like, oh, polar bears are dying and the ice caps are melting, like what gives? It's, people die. These have real human consequences, and we just can't wait and see. Like, that doesn't make sense. Where's the logic in that?
And where's the logic in spending $90 trillion in a plan that we don't know will work? And I want to echo the sentiments of the Republicans. Get rid of all subsidies. I want to make something clear. If you're anti-fossil fuel, you're working against human progress that helps human lives. All of our infrastructure, the technology we've created to save people when natural disasters occur, is based on fossil fuels. That's why we've had a decrease in climate-related deaths. Wait, how are we all going to be dead if all this is happening in 12 years? I don't understand that. And about the predictions that the IPCC had about global warming temperatures have not come true. It was much lower than they predicted. So if we're going to talk about these different plans to solve climate change, we're going to have to figure out what the cost is to our standard of living and to human progress all across the world. We're going to have to figure out if it costs less than other plans, it doesn't, and does it even have a high probability of success? I'll answer that for you, no. Also want to point out, the US government is the world's biggest polluter, and rich people like Leonardo DiCaprio fly around the world on private jets, wasting fuel, talking about climate change.
So my friends with the Young Democrats and Socialists talked about how these energy companies have special interest groups that they work with. Who are those special interest groups aligned with? The United States government. So let's cut subsidies and let's cut ties with the fossil fuels companies with the government. Let's get all the money out of the government with these lobbyists and everyone in the energy companies with the government. Who do they have left to pander to? Whose interests do they have left? They have their own interests and they have the interests of their investors and their consumers. We saw the same thing happen in 2010 after BP's oil spill. People stopped going to BP. BP's stock price dropped pretty damn far. Obviously, they built up back their reputation through a lot of different works and different conservation efforts and environmental efforts. If we cut subsidies and we cut ties with these companies aligned with the government, the only people they have left to serve are their investors and the people that are using their product.
My friends on the right keep talking about that the market can fix climate change itself, that the market can address these issues, which, for one, the market is not responding fast enough for what we need. We only have 12 years to make the impact we need. But I think what they're talking about is just a general difference in philosophy. So my friends on the Republicans, they're supporting a president whose slogan was, "Make America Great Again." Well, America's greatest accomplishments were not solved by the market. We did not defeat the Nazis by giving up to the market. We did not go to the moon. We did not build the highway system by just saying, we'll let the market figure it out. Yet now when presented with one of the greatest challenges our country will ever face, my friends on the right just want to give up, say, yeah, we'll let the market figure it out. It's a Neville Chamberlain response of saying, it sounds too hard, let's hope things work out.
For the college Republicans, I didn't want to address the desubsidization plan, that's a word, right? Because it is a very simplistic way of handling this problem, but I will because you keep bringing it up. The fossil fuel industry has been around for a couple hundred years now, and they've been so firmly entrenched in our government in terms of special interest groups, lobbying organizations, that they have a firm foothold on the market, and they have invested all they can into their fossil fuels. So if you want to cut subsidies from them, I'm fine with that. Coal is a failing industry, fossil fuels will be soon too. But when it comes to green energy and renewable energy, that is something that the government needs to subsidize, and it needs to subsidize them yesterday. Because this problem, again, the consequences that we're going to be facing are going to get worse and worse, and we're going to start realizing it's a problem 50 years from now, and by then it will be too late. So we need to subsidize, like Peter was saying, we need to be subsidizing them, and we need to be subsidizing them and pushing for green energy faster than the private sector ever could. All right? The government has a responsibility to take care of this problem, to take care of it now, because no one else will and no one else can.
So let's talk about subsidies, okay? Subsidies don't work because politicians don't have a market mechanism whereby they suffer the loss. If those subsidies are bad, no, you suffer the loss when companies like Solyndra get $500 million and then go bankrupt.
And you talked about the philosophy. Yes, we have a philosophy of freedom and progress. We want to progress and we want things to get better. But the drastic changes that you are proposing, or the drastic solutions that you are proposing, we don't believe will work. And that is the issue here.
And when we talk about progress, we mean progress based on fossil fuels. If green energies are the future, then by all means, right? I don't care what goes into my car. But currently, the reason that we are able to save people from natural disasters, which by the way aren't getting any worse, is because we have fossil fuels and we have an entire infrastructure based on them.
My friend on the Libertarians, Julius, mentioned that their philosophy is freedom, that their philosophy of freedom overrides these massive government actions. What about freedom to live? What about freedom to not have to go and suffer the results of massive storms, of floods? What about the freedom to not be displaced from your home? The majority of the effects of climate change, the worst effects, are going to affect the poor and the marginalized. The people who are causing climate change are the ones who are going to be able to afford to move to new areas, who are going to be able to get better homes. Yet the people who have had this, the people who are poor, the people who are marginalized, the people in disadvantaged communities, they're the ones who are going to suffer. What about their freedom to live a better life?
We will move on to the next topic. No, there is no. Yeah, Social Security, there we go. Okay, so the question is, should Social Security exist? If so, should there be an opt-out / should citizens be forced into participating? And why do you say will begin?
Social Security should
should exist because in all the countries in the world that have the highest gross national happiness, those being the Nordic countries, all of them have comprehensive social networks that keep citizens capable and able, ready based on government necessities and human programs. An example of this being in a Nordic country being if you break your leg, it costs you a total of usually about $100 to go to the hospital to get a cast, and then you're also given social benefits while you recover. In a country like this, you should have no capability to opt out because it's based on your checks and the taxes that go into them as well as benefits. And if you are capable of need or don't need them, then that's on you as well. You can also pay for the current system, your healthcare provider. But in most cases, people who are either senior citizens or too poor, they don't have any actual social nets behind them, and they rely on this sort of income. In most cases, I believe 1 every 3 Social Security beneficiary who is of an elderly age makes up 90% of their entire income per month. And these facts are only increasing with the fact that the pharma industry is increasing its prices on medical benefits and taxes. As the fact of the matter is, individuals can no longer pay for their medicine and no longer pay for their basic living incomes without Social Security in most cases.
So on Social Security, we would believe that there should be an opt-out system, which would eventually lead to abolishing Social Security. The reason for that is that Social Security in 1940, let's just look around the room. All of you would pay for my Social Security. That's fine. But now, as recently as 2013, they said that the 2 of us would pay for Justin's Social Security. That system is falling and it's flopping drastically. We need to start setting up a system in which people can opt out of that before it flops. I think we are saving people from a system that is going to destroy them if we allow people to opt out.
All right, so I'm gonna start you off with a little short math problem. So if you make $50,000 a year from ages 22 to 67 without ever getting a raise, which is extremely unlikely, I don't know why that would happen, but you and your employer would pay a total of $6,200 into Social Security each year. When you hit 67, you would start receiving about $1,550 every month from the government, from Social Security. And this adds to a total of about $335,000 if you live to age 85. So instead, let's say you take that $6,200 a year and invest it in the S&P 500 until you turn 67. Using a conservative 7% rate of return, you would retire with $1.7 million compared to the $335 you would receive from Social Security. Even by putting that $6,200 every year in a simple savings account, you would beat Social Security by $100,000. So instead of taking personal responsibility to invest or save for our retirement, we rely on a federal government that's $22 trillion in debt to manage it for us. It's like hiring a financial advisor that's $22 trillion in debt. That's stupid. And I don't want any politician to control my retirement. I don't want a Republican to control my retirement. I don't want a Libertarian. I don't want a Democrat. I know people might say not everyone can hire a financial advisor. That's true, but actually that's not true. Most of them charge a percentage, a small percentage. So if you have money, if you save that money from Social Security, you have plenty of money to pay a financial advisor. So it's time for the government to stop playing mommy and daddy and making you put $1 in your piggy bank every time, your little government piggy bank every time you get a paycheck.
So Social Security, ever since its invention in 1935, has revolutionized the quality of life for seniors in this country. Before it, half of the population over 65 is living in poverty. This program grants people the peace of mind to live out the rest of their lives with dignity, and that's what it's all about, is human dignity. And despite all the attacks by Republicans on Social Security, the majority of Americans know that and have said time and time again that they not only support Social Security, but know they will rely on it when they retire, or they already do rely on it. It is clear that reform is needed, especially because of cuts to it and our aging population. And a number of bills have been introduced by Democratic lawmakers that would fix these pressing problems, such as the House's bill to increase the payroll tax on the wealthiest of Americans, and increasing funding to Social Security over time. But what would not help it is creating an opt-out system. This is advantageous for people who can afford to opt out, who can afford to not take Social Security, but it will hurt everyone else who can't. It will hurt the people who simply just don't have those luxuries. So setting up the system is dangerous, and we need to protect Social Security. It's one of the most important government programs that we've ever created.
All right, so she mentioned that she wants old people to live their lives out in dignity, and I would agree. And personally, I could live my life out in dignity a lot more with $1.7 million than $1,500 a month. But also she came up with a solution that was, oh, if we just tax people more, then we can just keep subsidizing this failing program. And yeah, if we take other people's money and keep shoving it into the program, it probably can't exist for a little longer.
Anyways, so like a lot of conservative economic policy woes, the plan to just get rid of Social Security works super well if you just forget about poor people. Not everyone can afford to save. I would love to see people be able to not have to rely on Social Security and just have their savings account set them up for the rest of their lives. But the fact is that a lot of Americans can't afford to save. That's just, we're in college. How many of you guys can start saving? Good for you guys, I got paper books. The point is, when we live in a society where the poorest of the poor cannot afford to save, we cannot take away a public safety net that they rely on. You can't just forget that they exist and wait for the market to walk over them. We need to have Social Security because not everyone can afford to save for themselves. End of story.
So here's what I really don't understand. If everyone, including the poor, is being forced to save, then why can't they take those same exact savings that they have to put into Social Security now, and instead of getting a 1% return, get a 7% return? I think maybe what you're really saying is, or you're saying poor people aren't smart enough to invest. I mean, how patronistic do we have to get to say these people can't take the 10% that goes to Social Security and put it in the market? I mean, it's the same amount of savings. What you are doing is saying, instead of actually saving for yourself, and if you die or something happens, you have those millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands to pass on to your kids when you die. When you die with Social Security, first of all, if you die before the age you can get benefits, your survivors get 0. How's that for poor people? And regardless of how much you have saved up, when you die at the end of your life, you don't have any more savings. You just get your checks just stop. It's ridiculous. We've heard from these groups that government taking care of you will bring you dignity and happiness. Okay? The last person I need taking care of my dignity and happiness is Donald Trump or Barack Obama, and I think they would feel the same way on the first one. Okay? You guys are not going to get any money out of Social Security. It's going bankrupt. It's going bankrupt, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, like Charlie said, saying that poor people can't save is literally just the biggest insult to poor people I've ever heard in my entire life. So if they're making a paycheck, 12.8% of their paycheck's getting paid through the Social Security, you're telling me that they can't save that? The same money that's going to the government, they can't save that? So, I mean, it's really just an insult to say that poor people can't save, because the government's already taking the money from them. They can save it by themselves.
You're ignoring the institutions in place.
No cross-talk, please.
Q&A soon.
What Hannah and my friends in YDSA say, it's not that they're not at all saying, as the Republicans and the Libertarians are making this ridiculous claim that poor people are too dumb to save, which complete misinterpretation of our words. What we're saying is that in the economy, in systems that have tried to privatize Social Security, what has happened is poor people are more likely to be victimized, taken advantage of by investors, by corporations. In countries that tried more privatized systems, like Chile, like the UK, what ended up is investors tried to sell poor people these bogus investment plans that made them a ton of money, but screwed over poor people, and it ended up that the government had to go and bail them out, costing us more than what we would have had if we just, had a normal Social Security system. It is the having a privatized system, it's putting the hands of your retirement into investors. After looking at how, whatchamacallit, the big banks at Wall Street went and treated our savings for the '08 financial crisis, yes, I'd rather go and have a government I can vote on people handle my retirement than the people who crashed our entire economy.
So the issue about we need this for poor people, it doesn't matter if we need this for poor people. They won't have it in 20 years. It's not going to be there. So it's going to fail anyway. So just saying they need it. Yeah, they won't have it. That's not a solution. They need something to fix it. So we're saying that they need it. We get that they need it. We get that they're poor. We understand that. The solution is that we need something to fix it. We are offering a solution. Now, if you're going to offer a solution, please do so we can debate on that. But continuing to say that they need it is not an offer.
I just want to add on that federal audits have found $1 billion losses due to fraud in Social Security. When the Social Security actually had enough money, they would take the money and spend it elsewhere in the government, because believe it or not, the government has ruled that there's zero obligation for you to get the money. You don't have a right to that money. It's a tax. Let's be clear. Social Security is a tax. They give it to you because that's how the system works, but at any point they can change that and you can get zero, and guess what? Like Julia said, you're probably gonna get zero, so let's do something about it.
Yeah. So to back off what they were saying, everyone in this room, by the time they're 65, will not have access to the Social Security that they've been paying into since they were 18 or at least started paying taxes. Your parents will, and every time I file my taxes, my dad always says a big thank you for me paying into Social Security. Because I know, and he says, because I know you're not going to be able to use it, so I might as well be able to use it. So we need to have a plan for when it inevitably falls. And it's the downfall of what many socialist economic ideas have, is that they don't look to the long term. They look in the short term. They look, what's going to make people the happiest in the short term? What's going to make everyone feel better for the next 10, 20 years? But when we get down the road, next 30, 40, 50 years, when all these systems start collapsing because, as Margaret Thatcher famously says, you run out of other people's money, what do we do then? We need to stop it now before it becomes too late and this whole system falls and everyone loses everything.
Also, so the government borrows against Social Security quite frequently. So let's say you took some money to your financial advisor and you said, I want to put this in savings for retirement. And he's like, okay, so this person that told me the same thing 30 years ago, I'm going to give your money to him and then hope that someone 30 years down the road comes and gives me some more money so I can give back to you in your retirement. That's what the government's doing. It's not consistent.
So yeah, people are asking about solutions. I did in my opening statement, some things to be like, don't cut it, expand it. I literally gave a law that Democratic lawmakers introduced. These things that we know that we have to pursue. We are taking action, saying these things need to be fixed, but then not taking action or saying just let it go away doesn't make any sense. And definitely, what's not going to fix it. Is cutting taxes or, just saying, just bleed it out. It's that draconian sort of thinking isn't going to help it at all.
Going back to what the Republicans said, you can't continue to make that bullshit point about how this is going to run out in the future, because again, if you look at the Nordic model and the countries in Scandinavia, they've been doing the same system for the past 100 years, and their social debt is massive right now. Additionally, 80% of the Social Security funding comes from income tax, which is also the same tax that pays for the roads that you use, and also, the public university that you're in right now. Additionally, 15% of that is invested in stocks and bonds and treasuries in the United States. That's only going to grow. Right now, the Social Security Department sits on top of a $2.6 trillion surplus. 0 cents of the Social Security Administration goes towards the deficit. No portion of it can go to the deficit because there is laws barring it from borrowing in the first place. So the Social Security Administration is built entirely on the fact that your income tax is helping subsidize not only yourself, but also the individuals around you at all times. And with that, I understand that you're saying that some support net is some bullshit, shouldn't exist, but I mean, you're also not accounting for it, as someone up there once said, the institutionalized racism that is prevalent in our system. And don't fucking roll your eyes at that. It is prevalent everywhere. You cannot walk these halls of McMicken who built on the backs of slaves and say it doesn't exist. Don't give me that bullshit. Additionally, the Social Security Administration benefits the neediest of us, the individuals of us who cannot fend for ourselves. Your tax bracket that you were nominating and saying about counts for a $50,000 salary. Most people cannot have a $50,000 job because that doesn't exist for most people.
Hello, and we're back.
Back to it. $50,000 a year salary doesn't exist for most Americans because, again, the institutionalized racism and the fact that they also sometimes don't get a proper education or the capabilities of job opportunities outwards. Your tax amount doesn't count for it. Additionally, we need a progressive tax rate that cuts for those who are in the top brackets so they cannot opt out and still have to pay the same level, or not even the same level. Let me put that differently. Pay more taxes towards Social Security benefits for those who need it, because this, in a sense, creates a system of inequality which is prevalent in all capitalist countries.
Okay. Let's try to keep it a little more simple. Okay, so I think why is conceding to CR, so we'll go next. Yes. You wanted to? I think you were good.
So that was a lot. All right. The last part is what it is. So for FDR started Social Security, and he also is the guy who put, I believe, the Japanese in the camps. Am I right, Charlie? So a racist started that system. I'm black. I mean, the institutional racism there was ridiculous, you know? So when you're paying into a system that is going to ultimately fail, and you're being lied to, and you don't know that it's going to fail, but people are trying to tell you that it's going to fail, we call that a Ponzi scheme. So expanding it, okay, so let's expand it, and we'll just keep getting 1% returns on that, and then it'll fail, and then we'll be like, oh, we're 1%, we got that 1%, and then it failed, and we have no more money. Great, so we're still poor. Great. I mean, it's just a great line of reasoning, and I love it. Thank you.
I refuse the premise that minorities are not able to log onto their computer and pull up any of the 15 investment companies and make an account and invest their money. I refuse that premise. Minorities are more than capable of that. Also, you brought up that not everyone can make $50,000 a year. I agree with that, and actually, I did it with a percentage. The percentage you pay in FICA tax for Social Security. That percentage stays the same for no matter what income you make, so you come out ahead whether you make $10,000 or $200,000 if you don't go to Social Security.
You also mentioned how my taxes go to public colleges and these roads. I don't know if you've driven on I-71 or I-75 recently, but it's pretty goddamn shitty. So I haven't seen my return in taxes towards those roads yet. And also, one of the reasons why public college is so expensive is because the government is providing these federal loans through government funding, and these public colleges are not refusing to cut costs and actually raising the cost because they're guaranteed this money by the federal government.
Okay.
Cleveland Heights correspondent.
But before they go, I'd just like to say, you guys are a little bit better than cursing, okay?
My friends on the right keep bringing up these, what I have to say are very good applause lines of bringing up the internment camps, bringing up public college, bringing up all these things that don't have anything to do with Social Security. They keep mentioning, yes, we want to go and talk about solutions, yet Hannah here has been talking about solutions since her opening statement, saying, yes, there are solid plans where if we go increase the payroll tax this much, if we go and increase the amount of payments over time by this much, then we can address these problems. Yet they don't want to go and debate it. They don't want to actually debate that. They just want to go and argue for privatization, just put that out there. We want to have the actual debate. We're the ones who have been presenting long-term solutions. All they've just been saying is essentially government equals bad, why even bother to fix it?
I think what we've been arguing for is freedom, actually. And if we look at the Nordic models, Sweden actually privatized their version of Social Security. We do have a long-term solution. It's let's stop pumping money into a program that leaves poor people and the rest of us with almost nothing when we go to retire, and absolutely nothing if we die before then, or at the end of the day when we die, our survivors get zero. So why don't we switch to a system where we take the same percentage of everyone's earnings and actually let them get a good return that they deserve? And the reason so many people don't save in this country is because they rely on Social Security. They think it's going to take care of them when it won't. I want to make something clear. So Social Security is unconstitutional. I don't see anywhere in the Constitution where the government has the power to do all this nonsense. Social Security was founded on lies, more lies by FDR. They said not everybody was going to need a Social Security number. They said we'll take care of you. And in reality, Social Security was founded because big businesses wanted to force small businesses to also provide for retirement and therefore level the playing field to hurt their competitors once again.
All right, so Peter said that they had all these solutions. From my perspective, the only solution they presented is just taking more people's money and flushing into the system that's already failing. I don't really think that's a solution, but I mean, raising taxes is, it doesn't work. The system is broken. Pumping more money into it isn't going to happen.
You mentioned previously that you're the only ones that have been providing solutions to this. Yeah, we said in our opening statement we have a solution. Offer an opt-out to this problem. That's our solution.
You're saying we weren't providing solutions.
You told us that we had not been providing any solutions. So we're saying our solution is allow people to opt out.
Yeah, okay.
You said that. I'm done.
That is a good topic. So we are going to actually move on to the question and answers. And it is getting interesting. I've been reading some of the questions. So if you want to submit another one, though, it is really good in there. The first question that we will begin with, what? Can you not hear me? Oh. Well, you can hear me. Great. Okay. Great. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. How about that? Okay. We'll go with this question. What is the most effective way to ensure big companies don't take advantage of both their customers as well as the environment? And the rules for the Q&A, again, each person can have up to 2 responses. Or the group, I should say. And then we'll have to move on. Okay. Yes. What is the most effective way to ensure big companies don't take advantage of both their customers as well as the environment? Who would like to begin? You guys. Great. Why do you say?
I mean, the most effective way we can increase the government oversight that we have, as well as enforcing companies and organizations like that to increase their transparency. I mean, if you look, and also take money out of politics, the fact that we have these massive investment interest groups forming bases. So I think a good example is the tobacco industry. Back in the 80s when they were investing, people realized the fact that they were essentially destroying people's lungs. and the entire bodies. And so there's this massive overturn, the tobacco industry became demonized, and then they started doing an interest group specifically for arsenic or fire retardant furniture. And the basis of this is that fire retardant furniture creates these also similar effects in the human body, but they were just using interest groups to push these agendas across, saying that, oh, well, you need to start investing in these instead, to prevent the fact that the big issue is that people were lighting cigarettes and then forgetting about them, and then they're catching their houses on fire. So basically, it comes down to this. Government should be able to actually see what business is doing and enforce regulations on them to submit to them, such as environmental regulations, which businesses are often going to cost them.
So I think we're fortunate that we have market mechanisms like profit and loss to say that if you take advantage of your customers, they're probably not going to come back to you, and you're going to receive an economic loss from that. Also, consumers do care about the environment. Just in this example, my dad works for PNC Bank, and they have lots of rules about companies they won't even loan to, industries they won't loan to, because they care about the environment, and they're doing that willingly. Also, if we got rid of the EPA, that would help things, because the EPA actually, it has a system where companies basically pay to pollute.
So if we got rid of the system of the EPA, you could actually go to a court and get an injunction against a business that's polluting your environment, the area you live in. Instead of these big businesses lobbying the EPA and saying, I'm going to give the government some money so that I can pollute my region.
Just talk about it.
Okay. So I think the best way to go and prevent companies from taking advantage of consumers, it depends on the industry. So for things such as internet, where so many people only have the option of one internet provider, yet you need internet to basically function in any way of daily life, in that case, internet should be regulated like utilities so they can't go and take advantage of people. For situations like pharmaceuticals, where you have people like Martin Shkreli who are able to go and jack up the prices on certain drugs that people need to survive, and that's the only one making the drug, they don't have the choice. The libertarians' argument that you can just choose a better option, someone who's not taking advantage of you, if there's only one pill you can take, and that pill costs, what, $80,000, your choice is either pay $80,000, get taken advantage of, or die. You have to go and have a good oversight for each individual industry.
To respond to that, the reason that drug companies have at some points been able to gouge their prices is because the FDA, a government agency, says that other companies can't bring the same drugs to the market. So if we got rid of that system and actually allowed freedom and competition in the drug industry, then you wouldn't have that advantage. Other companies wouldn't. And if we want to make more things monopolies, we're just going to get more Flint Michigans. That's a government-granted monopoly. How does that end up?
We'll move on to the next question. And the next question is only addressed to Mario, and that is, can you elaborate on your assertion that the government is a gunpoint monopoly?
Okay, so what I meant by that is the government has a monopoly on force. That means that they're the only legitimate authority in the borders of the United States that can actually force somebody to do something and threaten to lock them in jail if they don't comply with it. Nobody else has that power. That's simply the government's power. That's why we say they have a monopoly on force and monopoly on coercion.
I would respond to that with, again, what I was bringing up earlier, that in that case, yeah, that's something that's good because I don't want a bunch of different companies each trying to go and claim a right to lock me up. I don't want one company saying, hey, I can make a little bit more profit if I lock this person up. I'll lock them up. You want one universal body for things such as force, such as jails, but you need it to be accountable to the people. And yes, I'm sure they can bring up plenty of examples of where the government hasn't been accountable to the people, and those are problems we're trying to fix. We need a system where we have honest policing, where we have criminal justice reform, where we have a government that listens to the people and works in their best interest. But in having force, a monopoly of force, that is one good thing the government does have.
So I don't think the Dems like completely understood what Charlie was trying to say. So Charlie was trying to say that so a government program like Social Security, if you don't participate, then the government can and will bring criminal charges against you. That's something like tax evasion. So if you don't participate in Social Security, the government uses force. Amazon, Facebook, Google. If you don't use Amazon, Facebook, or Google, they're not going to do anything to you.
There's a lot of talk about big government, and just to piggyback off of what Peter was saying again, a lot of the assumptions that are being made by college Republicans and Yale here are off the fact that the government is some giant body with no control over these people. And when it comes to monopolies, personally, I would prefer a system where my vote has a direct impact on what's happening in the government versus something, pay with my dollars for a private corporation. That's all.
The fact that your vote isn't going to have a direct impact because everybody has a vote, and you know, look at how our school system works. It's incredibly hard to make change there. You have very little say in the education your child gets or you get if you're in the public school system, because voting, trying to change things through voting is a lot more difficult. Like Jack said, you know, if you don't buy something from Walmart, they can't throw you in jail. If you don't do what the government wants, they will, or they'll fine you. And so, to respond to what Peter said, yeah, he makes a good point. I mean, we can't just have private companies throwing people in jail, obviously. We agree with that. But what we do want is to make the government accountable to people. So I agree with him on that. So how do we do that? We do that by getting rid of, we do that by taking away power from the federal government and bringing more of that decision-making authority to the states and to the local communities. Because, like Peter mentioned, yeah, sometimes the government treats people terribly, and they have in the past. So at the very least, we want those people to have a chance to move, but even better, give people more power to have a say in how their government's run by making things more local.
And with that, yes, there is value in local government for certain initiatives, but you can have much more control over the economy, you can have much more individual control over your destiny in this country if we go and create a system where your vote does matter. The power of your vote has been diluted by large corporate interests and super PACs. It's been diluted by gerrymandering, by restrictive voting laws. Your vote has the ability to create change. I would much rather have a government that is accountable to me than large corporations who are only accountable to their shareholders.
The next question is to everyone. What are your thoughts on agricultural subsidies to protect national security, i.e. preventing foreign investors from hijacking American food dependence? Does anyone want to argue?
Okay, so the question is basically, should we have U.S. food subsidies to make sure that we can grow our own food in case of time of war or for national security reasons? I don't think that's a good argument for subsidies. You're basically saying, let's use taxpayer money for some hypothetical thing that could happen, right? I mean, even if we were in a war, war is bad regardless, so I think we'd have our struggles regardless there. But, you know, we do have allies to trade with, and to me, it doesn't seem like a convincing argument that we should get the government involved just because something might happen or could happen. I mean, I don't really think the threat of foreign investors taking away all our food is really the most pressing issue.
Yeah, to kind of go off what Charlie was saying, if I remember correctly, I believe roughly 60 to 70% of our agricultural that we do import comes from Mexico and Europe. I might be incorrect in saying that, but if that is true, as long as we don't go to war with anyone in Europe or Mexico, I think we won't need these subsidies whatsoever.
Yeah, so I'm not really for agriculture subsidies because, well, people say that if we don't have agriculture subsidies, then food prices will be higher, and that may be true, but I mean, it's not like we're not the ones paying for the subsidies. All the subsidies that are given to these food producers and farmers literally come from our pockets in the form of taxes. So it's whether we just pay it willingly or unwillingly.
Well, hey guys, I think we might have found the first topic of the night that I actually agree with Yellen Republicans on. No, and part of the reason why I think agricultural subsidies are problematic is because the majority of agricultural subsidies are going to these large, big business farmers. They aren't going to just the little mom and pop. I'm fine for agricultural subsidies in an extent, helping little farmers who don't have a way to compete with the larger corporations. I think those are acceptable, but giving away large agricultural subsidies are basically just a giant corporate handout, and yeah, as you can probably tell, I'm not a fan of giant corporate handouts from tonight.
Again, yeah, cool, we agree. I'll be honest, I am, like everyone else here, do not know a whole lot on this topic. But in the way that I've been led to understand it, that we are subsidizing these companies in this industry so that we can protect our food interests if we do enter some national security threat, then yeah, that's definitely not worth it. Our own people are a much greater threat from this large agribusiness in that industry than we are from any foreign threat. You know, I would rather fight, you know, some other country over what food we get to eat than Monsanto, because Monsanto's a whole lot scarier.
Okay, are we on this topic? Okay, great. Okay. The next question is, 30% of the country's abortions are performed by Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood's average executive salary is $389,514. Would you consider this a monopoly? If so, what should be done to regulate it? Who would do this? Hey. You raise your hand.
Yeah, so Planned Parenthood has proven time and time again to be so incredibly vital for the health of women in this country, for the health of people who don't have, you know, for low-income families who, you know, don't have that access to it, the health care that they would otherwise get. Planned Parenthood, you know, it doesn't matter what percentage of their services goes to abortions. Abortion is something that is incredibly stigmatized for no good reason. You know, the fallacious notion that it's murder is a basis of claims to nullify a woman's right to do with her body what she wishes. And you know, these attacks on Planned Parenthood, I think a lot of times they come from, you know, people who, again, you know, don't have uteruses and can never, you know, experience what it's like to, you know, not go through an unplanned pregnancy. And it's extremely hypocritical that, you know, these far right proponents tout the notion of government interference, and then want the government to be involved in, you know, the most personal and private decision that someone can make.
Okay, see you.
So I'm going to try to stick to the question. No, I don't think Planned Parenthood is monopoly. I mean, I don't know, I would think that, but I do think that, you know, as libertarians, we support getting rid of all government subsidies to every organization, and that includes Planned Parenthood. You know, the question of whether Planned Parenthood is vital to women's health, I think it's that's definitely a discussion for another time, but I think it is worth pointing out that there are only hundreds of Planned Parenthood in the United States versus thousands of other clinics. So, women do actually have a lot of options other than Planned Parenthood. And I'd be remiss to not mention that Planned Parenthood has been in a lot of scandals that seriously question their ability to offer actual care to women. Some of the things that have come out of Planned Parenthood in regards to how they've treated women, how they've treated women in who are being sex trafficked, and things like that. It's really horrific. So the libertarian stance is defund all organizations across the board.
As long as it would take to debate the merits of abortion, I think I'll just stick to the question. So I don't think Planned Parenthood's a monopoly either. Unfortunately, a lot of other places also perform abortions, but I would agree with Charlie that I don't think any of these places are I don't even think that things that I agree with should be subsidized by the government. I just think it's not the government's spot to subsidize private businesses.
To kind of pick up back that, there are many other choices that women have for reproductive health in different institutions. There's also been multiple credible reports out there where they've stated that Planned Parenthood does not offer many of the what would you call them, services that they claim to do, such as mammograms and breast cancer screenings. But again, to stick to the question and not to start just an absolute screaming match like that happened a couple of years ago, I think it should be funded there should not be any kind of government funding put into it.
Most of you probably know how us Democratic Socialists feel about abortion, and it's a woman's choice. And again, abortions are a fraction of what Planned Parenthood actually does. But being that abortions and the other services that Planned Parenthood carries out are essential services that women rely on, and we believe that the government has a right or has an obligation to subsidize all health services that are essential to its citizens, we do believe that there should be continued subsidies for Planned Parenthood.
To go back to some of what originally was asked about whether Planned Parenthood is monopoly, whether you have enough choice, I would love for there to be more choice for things such as abortion, for women's health, for reproductive health care. The thing is, that choice has been restricted by libertarians and Republicans' favorite thing, government regulations. Abortion clinics in states across the nation are subject to ridiculous regulations that try to hold them to different standards specifically designed in the intent of the lawmakers to close down as many abortion clinics as possible. This is an example where, government regulation is actually hurting people's freedom of choice, people's freedom to choose who they want to give or receive services from.
So funny that Peter all of a sudden wants to cut regulation to increase competition when it comes to terminating the fetus, but anyway, I actually had a point to say after this, I completely forgot. I believe one of the government's very few roles is actually to protect life. So it's not that we want to impose, I'm just trying to get you to actually see where we're coming from. It's not that we want to impose regulation, it's that we want to save a life.
Again, what the gentleman was saying, a woman's choice is far more threatened by the own restrictions that somewhat draconian laws and a somewhat draconian judicial system rules on abortion than any lack of actual competition in the market. In this case, I don't believe that it's the market that's the problem, it's the government that's the problem. So again, we agree on this thing for once. We need to stop regulating abortion as heavily as we do for literally no reason. And when you do that, then you can have competition in the abortion market, and we don't have to worry about Planned Parenthood being a monopoly in the first place.
Okay. Yeah, let's have one more.
So in regards to regulations, I think what we're saying is it seems like a little bit of a lack of consistency to all of a sudden not want regulations, and in some states, so I guess I don't think that the regulations are more than elsewhere. You know, states are trying to put laws in place saying that abortion clinics have to have regular standards of safety, and the people doing the procedures actually have to be licensed. Planned Parenthood fights against this. In the Hellershed case in Texas, it involved the whole women's health centers. They repeatedly failed health inspections. Planned Parenthood repeatedly fails health inspections. A lot of states won't inspect Planned Parenthoods because of the political stigma. And there are legitimate concerns, but at the end of the day, pro-life people, and I want to make it clear, only some libertarians are pro-life, some are pro-choice, but from the pro-life standpoint, pro-life people want to save lives. It's not about the regulation, it's about the lives.
We are going to move on to the final Q&A question. They've been great questions. I hate that I can't choose them all, but I will go with this one. There we go. Okay. Companies that abuse their consumers will lose business. Explain the success of pyramid schemes and multi-level marketing. Should corporations be able to maintain business practices that are just barely tolerable? It's a fact that most businesses fail. How is it at all guaranteed a competitor will come along and succeed?
Yeah, so I guess the one main thing he pointed out, or he or she pointed out when he asked the question, was the pyramid schemes. So the way pyramid schemes work is that they're meant to deceive you up until the point where you eventually get caught, because again, you can only run the charade for so long. And then, of course, once the charade is up, you know, the punishment gets handed down. As we've seen in a lot of famous Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes, especially with Jordan Belfort and the penny stocks scheme, that everyone loves the movie for the most part. He was ordered to pay back every single dollar that he stole from his investors. So I mean, it's meant as a sort of deception, and you don't really figure it out until it's kind of too late, I guess. But most of the times they get caught. So that's I don't know if I'm missing anything.
I would just like to point out that the reason they are caught is because they have government oversight and government actually looking into those problems and looking into the businesses that are trying to deceive people. That's why Ponzi schemes have been able to get stopped. That's all I have to say on that.
Libertarians believe that just like using force against somebody should be illegal. Fraud is also should be illegal. You don't have any right to lie to people. That's not okay. And so yeah, the government should prosecute people who lie to others, especially in financial situations. Furthermore, the market actually has helped with this because people are interested in avoiding schemes. A lot of times you can just Google things and find out. I know I've had a couple job search incidences where I thought the company looked a little bit sketchy, and I just went on Google and was able to find out in a couple cases they were sketchy. So fortunately, we do have a lot more information than we used to, but maybe I agree with Peter a little bit on this. The government does have a right to step in because you have no right to lie to somebody. It's a violation of their rights.
Ponzi schemes are bad. Yeah, when you are lying to someone and manipulating them to get money out of it, that's an awful thing. That applies to more than just Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes. There are plenty of businesses that engage in those practices that our government has failed to prosecute, but we from the Democratic Socialist side would love to see those prosecuted as well. So, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that fraud's bad. I think fraud should be illegal, fraud is legal. But I mean, the only Ponzi scheme that the government doesn't have interest in shutting down is Social Security.
The libertarians mentioned that lying to people is one of the instances where they think government should go and prosecute people who use force. Is that correct in saying? Okay, just wanted to make sure. In that case, should we go and prosecute all of the oil companies that had studies proving the effects of climate change that they knew about beforehand, but then lied about and said they didn't know about it, allowing them to go and continue burning fossil fuels and exacerbating the effects of climate change? If you agree with that standpoint, I would love to see you and I join hands and call for some prosecution of oil executives.
I do think there's a place in any type of fraud to prosecute, but there is a difference, and it becomes nuanced. Maybe not in this case, but there are cases where people do have legitimate disagreements, and thinking that somebody's wrong is not the same as thinking that they're a liar. Are we also going to prosecute people who push for government policy based on predictions that became wildly false?
All right, that is it. So, we will, yeah, we have one statements. Okay. So, so we're going to do closing statements, but before we do, I know I didn't get to everyone's question, but that's okay. If you still want to get it answered, we have an after party at Max Pizza that you can ask anyone who, hopefully most of the debaters will show up here, you can ask. So, closing statements, we will begin with YL.
So, in closing, on, what was the first time? Big business. So, free markets. If you don't get that thing, you haven't been listening from us. Also, when it comes to climate change, somehow free markets came up again. That is a consistent thing. Keep an eye on that. And then on Social Security, an opt-out system, allowing people to get out of it before it fails, because it is going to. And offering people freedom. That is what we're about. Offering people the freedom to do what they want with their lives, because we believe people have that capacity. We believe adults can be adults and can control their own lives. And that's who should control it. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. No president should control your life except you. And that's how life should work.
So yeah, this has been fun and better than I thought it would be, so thanks for that, guys. I think you know where we stand on all these issues, so I'd like to leave you with one way I like to describe socialism to people, or democratic socialism. A lot of libertarians believe that, or all libertarians believe that the world should be a meritocracy and you should be given, or you should receive the benefits of the work that you put in. And quite frankly, we believe the same thing, except that we want to give everyone the same starting point. We want everyone to have equal access to healthcare and education, so you have that same opportunity to become that millionaire. Follow your dreams, man, but you better be able to do it whether you're born into poverty or whether you're born rich. A couple last things. Oh, shit. Can I use this? For those of you who don't know, there is a tuition hike that is being proposed by the Board of Trustees. They're voting on it on April 23rd. There is a petition that you can sign if you have not already, and you totally should.
Additionally, there's a panel to be hosted by the Roosevelt Institute of University of Cincinnati on the finances of the university. If you'll go to that, it's in TUC 423. Raise your hand, Andrew. Go to him if you want to learn about how the university is wasting your money. Additionally, there's going to be a university art gallery for 20 young artists with ethnic backgrounds. That's on April 19th in TUC Atrium. Come by some art, look at it, looks very nice. That's it.
Once again, I'd like to thank everyone who came out to see this happen and come out to this. We can't really do this without you guys coming out. We wouldn't do this if we couldn't garner attention. Once again, I'd like to thank Yao for once again putting on another great debate. I mean, it's always something a lot of people look forward to, and we're really, really fortunate that we can have these four major clubs get together and have a somewhat, a civil but heated debate about a lot of the political topics in today. So just kind of reiterate our stance, obviously, the typical stance you expect. Federal government needs to stay out of our business as much as we possibly can. We need to be as fiscally responsible as we possibly can on every single one of these topics. The more freedom you give to the individual, the better off the individual and the collective will be.
By the way, I think everyone can agree that UC spends money horribly and they shouldn't raise our tuition.
Yeah, I'd like to go reiterate what Republicans said. I want to thank Yale for putting on a good debate. I've been in a few of these, always love them, always a great time to go talk with these guys. In summing up sort of what we said, a lot of the debate tonight hasn't come down to debates of single issues, it's come down to a debate on philosophy. And I like a lot of what Julia said of that their philosophy is freedom, except I would say that is our philosophy. Our philosophy is freedom to go and be safe in that you have freedom to survive with access to healthcare. You have freedom from businesses taking advantage of you. You have freedom to go and succeed economically and achieve happiness in your life, regardless of your skin, sex, sexual orientation, or economic background. That's what we believe you have the freedom to.
All right, guys, thank you very much. So that will conclude the normal Great Debate 8. We do have the post-debate survey up here, as we did, Liz, and we do have, hold on, and we do have an after party at Max Pizza that will be starting at 9 o'clock, and then they do have karaoke starting at 10. We do, however, have a special post-debate panel that we're going to do with one person from each of the teams, and then a special guest that we have here. Yeah, there you are. So Hayden Williams is the current Director of Campus Engagement at the Leadership Institute. They're a nonpartisan nonprofit. He was born in Kentucky and was involved in politics from a very young age. On his university campus, he was involved in founding Model UN, College Republicans, and Young Americans for Liberty. Some of you might already know Hayden because there was a very well-documented case a couple weeks ago about him getting punched on UC Berkeley's campus while he was working there as a field rep. And that got enough attention that he was invited on stage with President Trump at CPAC to discuss freedom of speech. So he's here as a nonpartisan tonight to discuss freedom of speech with you guys and then with a panelist from each of the teams. So I'll turn it over to Hayden.
Thanks, everybody. You know, our great nation was founded by great people with even greater ideas. Chief among them was freedom of speech. Our founding fathers knew that our country would be better and nobler with the uninhibited exercise of free speech. I'm overjoyed to see y'all exercising your unalienable right in such a, for the most part, dignified way. When most universities like the one we're on tonight were established, they were built on mottos that included phrases such as truth, justice, wisdom, and liberty. And at the very core of a university's mission is preparing students for life as citizens in a free society. It's vital here that we can all have freedom of expression and a free, fair, and open debate with each other, where we can genuinely address each other's ideas instead of each other's character. All of you discussed a lot of great issues that are really powerful and prevalent, issues that I've personally spent a lot of time annoying my friends and family about. All of you presented your respective perspectives or philosophies on each of these issues, and it was awesome to witness such a passionate debate tonight. It really was great. And even though we probably won't be able to change each other's minds one way or the other, we're better off for having heard such a wide range of perspectives. And we're more well-rounded because of it. Everyone present here tonight is undoubtedly better off for participating, even if you're participating in the audience. For all my life, politics, social studies, civics, whatever you want to call it, were subjects of great importance to me. And it was always frustrating that the majority of people growing up seemed apathetic about these issues because they're so truly important to all of us, apathetic or not. Around 2016, for whatever reason, it seemed that people were becoming less apathetic and more involved in politics and the public policy process. Now, it seems that the majority of people are not apathetic. And whether we agree on policy propositions or not, I think we can all agree that this is probably a good thing for America. I'm truly honored to be with you all tonight, and thanks for letting me thanks for having me speak here at the end and expressing yourselves in such a great way. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Hayden, for being here today and speaking to us. So now we're just going to do a short discussion on free speech. So we'll go down the line, and each group is going to get a minute to talk about the importance of free speech.
Yeah, I think that free speech is incredibly important. Like I said, I've participated in a few of these. I'll be honest, there are times like leading up to this that I would much rather have spent my Tuesday night at home with a cup of tea. But I do recognize it is important, and it's important to go and hear from other perspectives. I think it's also important to be willing to challenge your own perspectives, let others challenge them for you, not just because it's this right thing to do, which it is, but also because you feel much more confident in your own beliefs, you feel much more confident in your own values, your own convictions, when you've actually heard from the opposing viewpoint and when you've actually had someone else try to challenge you on that. So, yeah, that was a very anticlimactic. Moving on.
Yeah, so the importance of free speech has obviously been shown on this panel by all these wonderful people. It is a necessity to how we progress in our society, how we develop new ideas, how we develop new concepts, how to do things better. Every one of us has that ability, and taking that ability and doing your job as a citizen of this great country, allowing yourself to speak freely and voice your opinions, allow your opinions to be refuted, allow your opinions to be debunked, and then taking that and building a new one. That is what we're about, that freedom to try and then fail and then rebuild and redo it and retry and keep building a better union, keep building a better republic, building a better democracy. And that is how we'll reach the precipice of what America can be. And I think that we have shown that today on this panel.
Yeah, and I, again, completely agree with what they say. You know, the First Amendment is without doubt the most important amendment in our Constitution. You know, the freedom of speech, religion, press, assemble, all that. You know, we talk about how, we're the freest country in the world, and that's absolutely true, because no other country in the world has a constitution like ours. It does not have something in place like a First Amendment that protects freedom of speech, like our country does. And it is absolutely important that we preserve that amendment, because like I said, if we didn't have the First Amendment, stuff like this couldn't happen. We couldn't come together to, talk about our differences and our disagreements on certain political issues. So absolutely, the First Amendment is the most important amendment to our Constitution. It is very, very important.
Free speech, oh boy. First of all, money is not free speech. Citizens United must be overturned. But moving on to what I think you guys wanted me to talk about, free speech is incredibly important, and also freedom of press and freedom of assembly. And to highlight that we as American citizens participating in our democracy has to do more than just voting. It has to do with speaking out about your beliefs and making sure that the people in charge hear them no matter what. And that is the reason that freedom of speech is important and the reason that it exists in the first place. So I would urge all of you to speak about what you believe in. And if that doesn't work, if people aren't listening, then you go gather about what you believe in. You go protest about what you believe in, and you keep working towards what you believe in until something happens. Because it is our responsibility as citizens to make sure that our government acts responsibly, acts in the interest of its people, and lets us live our lives the way we want to without anyone else screwing us over. So, thank you.
Okay, and that concludes the evening, and,
All right, guys, so once again, now we're all done, but we do thank you very much for coming out. Like I said, we do put one of these on every semester because we do feel that it is so important that these topics get discussed. and that you guys learn how to discuss these topics and be faced with opinions that you disagree with from all four of these groups. Again, we do have the after party at Max Pizza. We do hope that you show up. It's always a great time, and as I said, at 10 o'clock they start karaoke. Usually a lot of the debaters show up too, so if you guys had a question on the Q&A and didn't get a chance to get it asked, you can have it over a beer. And please take the survey. We love that feedback.